Hello everyone, welcome back to our ASP.NET Core error handling project course. In this course we are going to discuss about starting and setting up our project. Let's start the project and see. All right. So you use Visual Studio. Then what you have to do is you can simply on Visual Studio you can simply select the start a project and you can run the project. It works in VS Code. You have to run the .NET run command in terminal, then it will run. So let's see now our application start running. Let's when you use Visual Studio, by default it will open the browser, and you can see the output here. Also you need to customize this. Based on that, it will open the browser and see what will happen and what we are getting. So let's see, the response is coming as can connect to database is false. So this is what our expected output. That means if you see the project, the launch setting, we have defined that the command project name is project and the launch browser is true. That means when we run the application, by default it will open the browser and show, it will open the browser based on our configuration. Okay, so if we define default browser, it will open the default browser, or else if you define the particular browser, it will open that browser. Let's show you that setting. Edit configurations. You can see, let me see here, I have mentioned that I would like to open this application on Safari. Then automatically it comes. You can select any browser or default setting, then it will open the based on the default setting. And yeah, that launch URL I mentioned API monitoring. So I will give you overall detail in future sessions, so don't worry about much if you don't have, but I hope you guys have familiar with this stuff. Anyhow, if you stuck, let me know. Then anyhow, we'll do look at this stuff later. All right, so now what we were talking about is we have connected. It mentioned that DB connection status false, no? All right, let's see how it comes. So program CS and our application register and event service schedulers, models and services. Right, so in here we have seen that API monitoring, right? So let's go to our controller, monitoring controller. Okay, so what we got is that can connect to database is false because we haven't connected to database yet. Okay, so this is what the initial one we get, that sync task action get. So that's API, that controller name monitoring that we got. By default it is this one. So it will check return okay, new can connect to database, DB database can connect. If not connect, it will give us an error. Not sorry, if it can be connected to the database, it will show true, otherwise it false. Let's try to connect the database and see what will happen. All right, so before that, so we have talked about little bit about our project structure, project, and now we are going to connect to database. All right, so you may use many databases so far: MySQL, SQL Server, that means Microsoft SQL Server, MongoDB, or anything else, right? So in this scenario, we are going to use Microsoft SQL Server, and you may know that Microsoft SQL Server is purely for Windows operating system, but unfortunately, we are using Mac OS here. Therefore, we need to install Microsoft SQL Server through a Docker container, through a Linux based Docker image of SQL Server. Let me show you that and we'll come back to the code again. Okay, all right, so let's see. This is the Docker image I have created for Microsoft SQL Server. So first of all, I have installed a Microsoft.NET SQL Server image. All right, so I got it from the Microsoft Linux based server from the internet. Okay, so I have contained two images, and the container will contain I give my different naming, and it's run on my COS, and so this is the image details. So if you want, I can provide another video regarding how to create a or set up a Docker for the Mac OS with the Microsoft SQL Server image. All right, so let me show you something. Let's see if we select this, and images, or images hub. Okay, so let's run this project. Sorry, let's run the image. Okay, it's running. Okay, already our image is running, so we just run our container. Okay, let me show you one thing. Okay, running. So here we can see some details regarding our Microsoft SQL Server image, like it's a Linux based image, and we can see networks. Here we can see environment. So here you can see my username and password that will be used in our connection strings. Okay, now we have set up Docker and Docker image of Microsoft SQL Server on my Mac. Now if you come back to the application, so we can see app setting development JSON. There I just defined, let me, sorry, yeah, app setting JSON. So since we didn't include the production JSON, I have defined the connection string inside the application JSON that can be consumed by all the environment. All right, so event scheduler DB data source localhost 1433. Yeah, I forgot to tell that. So if you see, this is my portal, so this is the Docker image port, so that is localhost 1433. Okay, port number that you can get it from. I saw you everything. No, work, Microsoft SQL labels, environment. Okay, this is TCP 1433, and here also it mentioned, and other than that, runtime is okay. Images. All right, I saw you everything up to now. State also fine. All right, so okay, this is the port. So this is what I wanted to show you, 1433. So let's come back to our application and see connection string localhost 1433. Initial catalog, I have mentioned our application DB name, username and password, and encrypt false because I'm connected to a encrypted, not encrypted application. Let's try to connect our application, remove the existing connection, and I told you that earlier I will do it everything in front of you, and let's see to connect, and we'll try to get an error. See, new database, connect to a database. All right, so let's see what will happen. So this is a connection string, localhost and catalog, and all. Let's see what will happen. I am expecting an error. We'll see. All right, because all right, the database is not yet created, right? So we are trying to connect to a database that's not exist. Before that, we do something small change we do here. Since we haven't created a database yet, let's remove this database detail here. We try to connect the server. All right, so we have our local host server that contain the Microsoft SQL Server image. Yes, now we have successfully connected to the database server, right? So let's see. All right, so we have connected to the server, and we have don't have a database for this, but these databases for existing project, not for this project. This project we haven't created the database. The name of the project database is EventScheduler app, right? So since it's not listed because we haven't created, let's try to create the database for us. Okay, so here we have two approaches. One, we have in memory, and another one is connecting to a local DB. We are not going to connect any hosted one. All right, so in memory we use normally setuping of initial project for pet project, or getting know about our so environment, and that normally used for initial stage of software development. But we need to connect to a database, and we need to connect local database and see everything works fine, then we will go for the staging or production DB. I hope these are the common practice we follow up. And for normal use and for little small application, we can use in-memory database. All right, so let's try to create a local DB of our Microsoft SQL database for this event scheduler application. Let's try to run entity framework code. Let's talk about a little bit about this. Entity framework code is an ORM, object relational mapping tool that help us to make a connection between our application and the database. Okay, you can connect MySQL or SQL Server, anything it can be happen, any database. So it gives us a intermediate job. So it gives us a way to connect our application to the database that we define in the DB context. Let me give you some idea about that. Application DB context, where we define everything regarding our database. We define our DB sets. Those will be converted to a tables in our database. So that is events and participants and schedules and speakers here. All right, so entity framework core gives a way to connect our database. In this course we are not going to discuss more about entity framework core, because this course is targeted for error handling and debugging. All right, yeah, that's all. We going to use code first approach in here. So entity framework are we define everything. That means all the database related stuff in here in the DB context. Entity framework code will convert it into a database objects and database by default. So we just need to tell entity framework that, so this is our DB context. So let's see, I'm just removing last migration. Okay, just don't forget about this. Okay, all right, so let's see. So what I did is, so we need to tell we need to tell entity framework go, this is our DB context that we have defined, and the migration gives a we will create a DB stuff inside our in memory. Okay, that locally it will create in memory, it will create that. When we go for the update database command, it will create actual instance in the database itself. Okay, add migration check for the DB context stuff and create the in memory stuff. Let's create a migration. Don't worry if you can't understand this stuff, these will be learned in a different course to understand entity framework core with ASP.NET Core Web APIs. All right, in this course we are targeting how to debug and error handling the application. All right, let's me give an initial migration, but a person who familiar with Visual Studio Code, they can use DB package manager console. Inside the package manager console, we just need to add migration command, then it will create migration with the name that we have given. Let's see whether if we are getting error or not. All right, we will get, yeah, as I mentioned in the initial project, so initial course, that we may end up with errors, and I will show you how to fix it. Okay. This is all right. So what we are saying, what the error is regarding is schedulers. We haven't yes, the project. Okay, we haven't selected the correct target project. Let me show you one thing. All right. So when we try to add migration, okay, so let's see, this is a project that we have selected. Starter project will be the one that we have going to apply the migration, but the migration details will be come up inside the event scheduler data. That project will contain our data related stuff. There only we have defined our db context, as I shown you earlier. So we should select the migration project as a event scheduler data project. Let's see. All right, so the migration is done. Okay, so now we can refresh this and see whether the db is exist or not. Let me check. Why it is not okay, because we haven't updated database. Okay. All right, let's see. Entity framework, now add the migration in memory. Now we need to update database. We should make sure that whatever the db migration we have done recently, so we have added that migration. So migration project event scheduler data, and startup project is our event scheduler. Let's try this. Okay. All right, done. See here, not here, yeah, earlier we have done migrations. No, that migration already here, that initial migration, if you refresh it, okay. So let's see now, this is our database. Now refresh and see how it happens. Okay, when I refresh, you may see that event scheduler app was created. When I was actually it already created. When I run this update my table database command, that means it already created. I don't like to see the database inside my IDE. If you use Visual Studio, you can simply connect the Server Explorer. There you need to provide the connection string. Then you can connect to a database by selecting the drop down list of the database, and you can simply view the database inside your Visual Studio. And VS Code also you can install extension for that, but here also inbuilt database viewer is there, but I would prefer to go with Azure Data Studio. Let's see, try to connect the Azure Studio. So we gave localhost the SQL login username password that we have given to during the connection string. Let me that username password that we gave for upsetting JSON, because that is our username password for SQL Server image. Let's try to connect it. Okay. All right, now yeah, let's refresh and see the database is here. Event scheduler app, our app database successfully create. Let's see, these are the databases: events, participants, schedules, speakers. All right, so see that the db context that we have created, they contain the same tables, and that already done inside the migrations. All right, because if you create migration, it will give the whole history. Before this demo, I have already created a migration called initial that's contain the actual details. Okay, this one, but okay, that's for about this. Now I don't want to see here. Okay, now our application successfully connected to uh, database. That means database successfully created. So let's see the connection string and upset ingestion. Yes, now try to run the application. Okay, right. So can connect to database true now because we have connected to a database that exists. Make sure that Docker image is running and SQL Server instance successfully created. And also now let's do one thing. I have talked about you regarding in memory and the local DB. Let's go to the program CS. Change this to let's minimize it. All right, so check it. So now we have connected to a SQL Server instance by connecting to a get connection string event scheduler DB that mentioned here, event scheduler DB. All right, now let's try to connect it. So now we saw that it works fine. Let's try to connect it to an in-memory database. Anyhow, it's a database, so let's see what happens. All right, DB connected successfully. So if you want to refresh and so yeah, okay, why I'm refreshing it, so you may think it may be a previous output, that's why I just prove it by refreshing. All right, so now we have connected to a local DB and in memory database. That's all about this part, and we have discussed about how to set up initiate our application, how to connect to a database, and that's all. In upcoming videos we will talk about the project structure, and we will start the error and debugging an application of ASP.NET Core. All right, that's all guys, see you all next session.